Hey guys, today I'm going to show you how to make this packable net bag that's good for farmers market runs. It holds all your larger items, obviously.
First thing I want to do is apologize, you guys, because the audio from my original video was damaged and I've done my best to do a voiceover, so I'm sorry if some things don't match up. So let's jump right into it. Like I said, this bag requires a lot less material. I have 2 shirts worth here that I'm going to use, and it's actually not even going to take this much. So I have this red, and I'm going to trim it with purple. So we're going to start off with a magic circle. So we're just going to make a loose slip knot, keeping that open, and chain 1. And then I believe I'm going to put 6 single crochets into the opening of my magic circle. And this is because I have like a very thick cotton yarn. If you have something thinner, you might want to do 8. Just as long as it's an even number, you'll be fine. So 6 single crochets into the magic circle. And then I'm just going to pull firmly on my tail to bring that circle around and tighten it up. And I'm going to slip stitch into the first single crochet. So pulling up that V and just placing 1 slip stitch into that first stitch. And then from there, we're going to start our pattern. And for our first round, we're going to be smaller and we're going to add as we go. So for the first round, we're going to chain 3 and then slip stitch into the next stitch. So we're actually not crocheting into our stitches all around. We're making this open chain pattern. So in every stitch, all I'm going to do is chain 3 and then grab my next stitch of the previous round and slip stitch. And I'm going to do that the entire way around, chaining 3, slip stitching into the previous stitch. Okay, now once I've made it all the way around and I'm back to my beginning slip stitch, I'm left with kind of this flowery pattern because we are adding stitches. Even though it's just chains, we're making extra stitches in every round. So it's kind of bulging out on those chains. But we want to get bigger this round, right? The same way that we increase a regular circle. So this round, I'm going to chain 5 and I'm going to place my slip stitches into the chain on the previous round. So we're going into this first chain, the first chain of 3 that I did, and I'm just going to place it in the middle there of that chain, slip stitch, and then I'm going to move on and chain 5 again. And every time I'm just bridging the gap between those previous chains. So I'm going to slip stitch into the chain and into the chain hole, not even into the actual chain stitch. So slip stitch into that chain gap, chain 5, all the way around until we get back to our first chain 5. And so here now is what this looks like after our round of chain 5. And you'll see this is just about the same size as my previous bag, so we're off to a good start. If you want your bag to be bigger, you maybe now would move on a step to chaining 7 and then slip stitching, just so we're expanding the base of the bag, and then we're going to start to move up. But for us, we want this bag to be the same size, so we're going to stick with chaining 5 and slip stitching into the previous chain. And what that's going to do is, because we're not increasing our circle anymore, it's going to start to cup this kind of flower circular pattern and start to go upward, forming the body of the bag. So it's super simple. I've probably explained too much. We're just going to chain 5, slip stitch into the previous chain. And we're going to do that the entire way around, and I'll meet you back at the beginning. Okay, here we are after our third round total, and this is all we're going to do for the body of the bag. So because we're not going to add any more, we're going to start to cup, and I'll show you this as we go, that the structure of the bag is going to be this size at the base and then moving upward, just like we saw on our previous bag. So I'm just going to continue for several more rounds, probably 5 or 6, just doing this exact same thing, chaining 5 and slip stitching into the previous chain. So you can see that within 1 or 2 rounds, we're already starting to cup, so we're looking perfect. I'm going to continue and finish the bottom of my bag, chaining 5, slip stitching into the previous chain every round. And I'll meet you back when we get to the top of the bag and start to form the handles. All right, so now you can see that my bag is about the same height as my previous bag, and I've stretched it out some, do a little bit more. I like to do this because your bag is going to stretch when you pack it with stuff, so it just kind of gives you a more realistic idea of what it's going to be like. So I like to go ahead and pre-stretch that out. So now all we have to do is craft the handles, and I'm going to do this exactly the same way I do my regular bags. So if you know how to do this, it'll be super simple. Basically, what we want to do is we want to count how many sections we have. So we're actually going to count the chain spaces of our final row, and I ended up having 7, so that works out perfectly. Basically, what we're going to do is we're going to start with a much longer chain. We're going to chain 20, skip the next chain space, and then anchor with a slip stitch into the third section. Then we're going to continue with our usual pattern. We're just going to chain 5, slip stitch into the next section, and form our next handle. So enough talking, let's go ahead and see what that's going to look like. I'm just going to go ahead and chain my 20 for my first handle, and coming in with my purple yarn, because that's my contrast color, So this is the section I'm starting in. This next section is the one that I'm going to skip. So starting where I'm at, I'm just going to chain 20. And there's 20. So like I said, this next chain of 5, we're going to skip. So pulling up that following chain of 5, we're just going to slip stitch into that chain like we've done the entire time before. And there's the beginning of our first handle. So now that we've done that, we're going to continue like we have been and just chain 5 and slip stitch into our following chain space. Because we've now taken up 3, this is the last section on this side. See, and now we're ready to move on and form our second handle now that we've anchored kind of that space in between the handles with one more chain of 5. So we're going to form our next handle by chaining 20. And there's our 20, just straightening out that chain, making sure it's not curling or twisting. And then just as the previous strap, we're going to skip the next section, put nothing into this chain of 5, and we're going to anchor with our slip stitch into the third section on this side. Same exact thing, we're going to chain 5 to bridge that space and just slip stitch into that next section. So there's what that looks like with both of the basic shapes of our 2 handles. And so now all I have to do is I'm going to go around and I'm going to put a single crochet into every chain space. So we're starting off with our handle and we're going to put a single crochet into every chain of the handle, all 20 stitches. And then when we reach the bottom, we're going to skip our slip stitch. We're not going to put any crochets into any of our slip stitches. Now we finished our final stitch, the 20th stitch of the handle. We're going to skip the slip stitch. You can see how nice and thick our handle looks. And then we're just going to do the exact same thing, put a single crochet into all 5 chains of this next section. So just following the same pattern of the previous round, just skipping the slip stitches.
This is the stitch we're skipping, and here's the start of our next chain, and this is our chain 5.
And there we go, the first half is finished. We're gonna skip our slip stitch and do the exact same thing for the remainder of the bag. Single crochet into every chain stitch, just skipping the 2 slip stitches that we have remaining. And now you've done it, all we're gonna do is cut our working yarn and bind off and then weave in our end. So I just cut my yarn, pull the loop through so that it's just a tail, and then I skip the next stitch, pull the tail through the 3rd stitch and back through the original stitch so it's now on the inside of the bag. Then I just give everything a nice big stretch again, weave in my end when I get to it, and our bag is ready. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you want to learn how to become a creator and craft for our planet, visit www.gigletsgarments.com. Thanks so much.